And so I would just like to take a quick second to recognize the sponsors of today's event, Global Water Futures and the Global Institute for Water Security, the College of Arts and Science, and NSERC Create Inspire for committing the resources to make this special event a reality. Our virtual audience, and would like to thank you for joining today from Canada and of course around the world. Last year, the Women in Water lecture series reached over 1,100 registrants in 45 countries. And so we hope that you will share this series with your colleagues and friends so that more people will be able to join this community. And finally, we are planning to launch a Women Plus Water expert list in 2023. And many of you here today, in person and online, are water experts. And so we would invite you to submit an expression of interest on our website so that we can contact you to apply to be on the list. And the idea is to connect women and non-binary folks, people that are also men, anyone who is doing gender-based research that highlights the gendered impacts of water research, increasing visibility and connecting people with opportunities. And so we would invite you to be part of that. And with that said, I'll pass this over to Dr. Joyce Macbeth to do a territorial acknowledgement and introduce our speaker for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. We're gathered here today on Treaty 6 territory in the homeland of the Métis and reaffirm our commitment to the process of reconciliation with one another and our community. I'd like to take a couple of moments or a few moments of silence today in memory of those who died in the tragic events at James Smith Cree Nation and Weldon, Saskatchewan last week, in solidarity with their families, friends, and community. Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Linda Campbell. Linda is a professor at St. Mary's University in Nova Scotia in the Department of Environmental Science. The focus of her research is on aquatic ecosystem health, including the impact and fate of toxicants and human interactions with aquatic ecosystems. Recently, she began a study of remediation of historic gold mine tailings and wetlands in Nova Scotia, and I'm fortunate to be involved in that project as a collaborator. Dr. Campbell is originally from Edmonton, Alberta, so the West is not a strange place for her, and she's familiar with the cold winter. Welcome, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And is the camera good? We're all set to go. Great, thank you. It's a real honor to be here today with everybody. I flew in close to home. It's really nice to be back here. And yesterday was so beautiful. The sunset and the colors, it's amazing skies here. And then this morning, did you all see the fog yeah, we brought it for you from Halifax. Enjoy it. And I'm very honored to be part of this. And I was just looking at the list of Women Plus Water list. There was a flyer on the table, and just what an amazing list of people. It's a real honor to be included with them. Amazing. I'll be watching for future online talks, absolutely. Today I'm here to talk about the title, as you can see, In Between Both Worlds, Navigating the Globe as a Deaf Scientist in a Hearing World. This picture here is showing a lake with two islands in it, and then the rainbow between those two islands. And you can kind of see the fog and the haze over one of the islands there. This is from Noel Wape, which is in Patagonia, Argentina, and I've done a few years of work there myself. And so this picture really represents to me sometimes how I'm navigating, you know, the known experience in the known world that you can see here very clearly on the left-hand side, but where I'm going is a bit more hazy. It's a bit more blurry, ambiguous. That doesn't mean it's bad. maybe I'll find a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow in the mist. And so it really does for me represent the work that I do and the experience that I have. I'm going to try to see if this remote works. Let's give it a shot. And again, I'm very honored to be here in Treaty 6 as a guest. And coming back again to Treaty 6, it is a very good feeling to be back here. And all of the people that have been living here for time in memoriam and working on the lands, living on the lands. And thank you so much for having the opportunity to be here. And also coming from Nova Scotia, where we did recently have the mass murdering in Portapique, and then coming here to the recent tragedies that happened for the Cree Nation, it does cause me pain. And certainly for the families and the communities around there, it does hit home. And so I'm coming from Jabuktuk, which is Halifax in Mi'kma'ki. And really it has been unceded from the Mi'kmaq, and it is as beautiful as here. I've been working with the Mi'kmaq community members, and it's a very important part of my research. And so we do have a treaty of 1725 between the Mi'kmaq and the English government, and it's ongoing peace and friendship treaty. And the Zoom is blocking part of the slide, unfortunately, but right here in the bottom right, it's really exciting because in Nova Scotia, we will be having the Indigenous Games in 2023. And so if there's really exciting sports coming our way, and certainly come out and see it. And of course, thank you to the sponsors, for Dr. Joyce Macbeth, who made all of this happen. Amazing in the middle of such a busy schedule. So thank you, Joyce, and everybody else, the University of Saskatchewan, and NSERC Create to Inspire, the University of Regina, for making this trip happen. Thank you. And Joyce mentioned the partners, and Andrea did as well, and all the people that were involved. So thank you to everybody. And so the talk today, I do plan to publish at some point soon. Originally, it started with the Canadian Limnology Society, who invited me for a plenary talk to talk about my experience as a deaf scientist in an aquatic research field and how I navigate that. And then the Global Institute of Water Security, when they reached out to me and invited me for this talk, I said, well, this is just a very perfect fit. And so I can focus on my water theme in this talk as well, but I will mention, but the work that I am presenting here will become a publication in the Canadian Journal of Fisheries and Aquatic Science, CFAS. So that will come out soon. And there are a lot of resources and materials in my presentation today that are not yet published. So I will ask everybody, please do respect that fact and that it will be used for publication. And if you do want to use any of this information for your own resources, please just reach out to me first. There is a lot of work that is invested in this, so thank you for your understanding. The goal of my presentation today is to provide some background of what it's like to be a deaf scientist, from a community perspective, what it means to be a deaf scientist. It's not just about my hearing or a lack of. There's certainly more to it than that. And it's a very rich world when it comes from the deaf community, and developing resources that can be useful for people in other institutions, not just my own. And I had to make this talk, so I wanted to make sure that it was worthwhile, right? And certainly I encourage people sharing information and having those stimulating discussions is paramount. Unfortunately, the box at the very top for live transcript is blocking some of my text. That's unfortunate. Are we able to just exit that out on the top? But to be honest, the career that I've had would not have happened. No, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah, it's okay. But I certainly wouldn't have the career that I've had without my friends, colleagues, and mentors along the way. And that what makes a career worthwhile and fun. And so acknowledge everybody who has been on the journey with me, but I also want to add that there has been some harsh things said. Don't take it personally. It's not for you at an individual level. It's looking at it from the systematic barriers and oppression that exist. It is not at the individual level. However, at the individual level, we can work together to remove those barriers. And so in no way am I here to say that my experience has been entirely negative. And some of the harsh things that have been said are, oh, amazing, very welcoming, very warm. That's not the issue, but it's still not a safe space for me to be standing here. I know of discussions that have happened behind my back, people making assumptions, people making decisions on me, assuming that there are barriers or assuming that I can't do it, or it's just too much work, why bother? The famous word is never mind. And so a lot of assumptions are made and decisions being made. You know, should I be included in meetings? What about reviewing my grant applications? I've had several comments on my grant applications that I look at and just go, I wonder, was that the reason it was turned down? Interesting. Okay. Inviting me to collaborate or be in networks and different meetings and organizations. It's an ongoing barrier. So for me to be here standing on camera, on Zoom for the whole world to see, talking about this topic is a big risk for me. One of the biggest risks that I can take for me to be as open as I am right now in front of everybody. Okay, so I'm here and I'm admitting that it is not a safe space. So why did I agree to give this talk? I've noticed that attitudes are changing. The world is more aware than it has been in the past. So, and we need to do better. The old ways are not working. They have not been successful. Well, except for a small group of, and for them, it's been very, very successful, the old ways. But for many, many people, it has not been. And when we look really globally, the world is changing. We have ongoing wars and conflicts. We have climate change. We're still in the middle of a pandemic that's been ongoing for 3 years, and we're worried about new pandemics that will come up in the future. And so the old ways of working are not going to be successful. So really, it means that all hands are needed on deck. And there's amazing people out there who are trying to do good things, and they are doing good things. And so diversity, inclusion is required to be able to solve these complex problems. And I do have privilege. I'm tenured. I have a wonderful job. I have a very good institute behind me. And the text that's covered right now is really important because I'm working with an amazing, talented team. Students who are really excited to, get up every day and have these brand new ideas. That's what makes it fun. And so I feel that it's time now that I can talk about this. Although it's still risky for me, but I'm all right. And it's a good exercise for everybody to check your privilege. I found this really nice graphic online, and it was developed by NASA scientists. And the link is at the bottom of the slide, so you're able to see that there. You can see part of it, but I can send the link for anybody that is looking for that. And the idea being is that we have a circle, a ring of privilege. The out of the ring are the people that there are those who are seen as different. Maybe the color of your skin, the size of your body, if you're neurodiverse, what institute you went to for your education, all of those would be those lesser privileged people that it takes more work to access the inner circle. And so as you work your way to being closer and closer to that circle, you're looking at those who come from a wealthy background or those that have, they have the right type of English as their language of use, or they come from a more stable family than others. Or you went to the right institute to get your education. So they then have that easier time of accessing various means because of their privilege. And so I like this image because everybody has their own barriers. Everybody has their own privilege as well. Depends on the situation. It depends on the context that you're in. And so it is a good tool to think about and check your privilege. I had fun with this slide, I'll admit. And I have some pictures here of me doing research all the way back from my undergrad on the far left to the right in present time. It's actually really hard to find pictures from that pre-mobile phone time, I must say. I had to scan my pictures. And then I will have some papers that I was privileged enough to be able to publish during my career. Again, shown in a timeline at the bottom. And so it's time for me to pay it forward. And I still am doing that. All right. And so to give you a little bit of background, how many of you know deaf people? A deaf person and a deaf person that signs, not just a deaf person. Does anybody know sign language in the room? Great. Okay. All right. Great. A couple in the room. That's nice. So there is some experience with us in the room. But maybe for some of you it's new, or maybe it's not new. But it doesn't hurt to talk about it. So one of the things that culturally deaf people will use is a capital D when indicating deaf, to show that they are part of the deaf community, that they use sign language as their primary language, and that they are part of that cultural practice within the deaf community. And so it's normal for the deaf community to use the large initial D. Practices is changing, though, to go to a lowercase d to be more inclusive of a broader range of people who have hard of hearing, late deafened, to be more inclusive. There are some exceptions. For example, the deaf community doesn't often interact with other disability communities. A few people that are deaf do not identify as disabled. And that's not coming from an ableism view, but it's just how they approach the world. But when we advocate for accessibility, that is certainly when the deaf and disabled communities come together. Another thing as well, there is not just one sign language for our world. It's very dynamic and complex, and you'll be learning multiple languages if you are a signer. I have a map coming up soon that will illustrate that point a bit more clearly. American Sign Language actually historically has roots from French Sign Language. And so I actually understand more of the LSQ, the Langue de François, than British Sign Language. But not 100%. It is still a distinct different language. And we are working with 2 interpreters as well, and we have French interpreters online. They are professional interpreters working with 2 languages and facilitating access between their working respective languages. And they're working for everybody. I could fly in here and I could sign. I don't need the interpreter. And then I could leave and say, well, my job is done. I've given my presentation. I'm good. But what about you in the audience? Would you have understood? So the interpreters are here for you. Another thing to illustrate for the deaf community as well is we're very porous. North America, we have a similar enough language that we can understand each other. Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. and the Rochester Institute of Technology in New York are 2 post-secondary institutes that use sign language as their language of instruction. So North America, the deaf community really is quite cohesive and very porous. We're few, but we do know each other very well, and we have a very strong network with each other. I had some fun picking out some of these gifts for the slide. And so these are deaf performers, very successful performers in their own right. We have Nal DeMarco. We have Shaylee Mansfield, Troy Koster, who just won the Oscar. And Trishelle Edmond is a actor on stage. And they're all signing, and they actually, I'll ask, do you understand what they're signing? No? Okay. So Niall, he's saying, yeah, there's many deaf people that are, yeah, we're skilled. We got this. Troy is saying, now is our moment. And then Shaylee is saying, we have to make a decision now. Now's the time. And then we have Trishelle saying, meeting us here, or meeting halfway, you could say, depending on how you interpret it. There's multiple meanings in what Trishelle is saying right there. It looks like a very simple sign, but how you interpret it would have quite a few options. Mm-hmm. I find it so awkward to give a presentation while I'm signing, and then there's lots of English text on the screen. So I was like, no, I'm going to put some sign language in my slides. This is a map that I referred to earlier, and it shows the known sign languages globally. And I will emphasize that many scholars do not accept this map. The research is still ongoing to document sign languages. And so this map is based on Wikipedia and pulling out various articles of sign language and then mapping what they're talking about on Wikipedia. So this is more of an accurate map of sign languages found on Wikipedia than anything else. But you can see the idea of that there are more than one sign language in the world. There's different families of language that then root out into various other languages. In Canada, we actually have multiple sign languages. We have LSQ in Quebec, we have MSL in the Maritimes, and we have American Sign Language. And we also have multiple Indigenous sign languages as well, including the Plains Sign Language, what is used here in Saskatchewan and Alberta. The point is that sign language is complex and there's lots of them. And so cross-cultural communication is also always important. And of course, if any of you here as Canadians maybe went to India, let's say, or went to the UK, you'd expect a different culture and a different way of working with individuals. You're negotiating and discussing or collaborating, and that would happen cross-culturally. And so this image was taken from a book, When Cultures Collide. Sometimes I feel like that. I'm right in the middle of a collision every single day, but that's okay. It's fun. But it shows how the flow of that dialogue takes place culturally. People are sitting around a meeting table. How would that take place? So in Canada, it says we're very direct. This is our business. This is what we want to get done. Let's do it. With the Americans, though, there's a lot of community networking, teasing, that dialogue. And then at the end, fine, they'll come to that decision. And so on and so on, that's illustrated. So you're thinking, why am I showing you this? Wait to the next slide. Deaf culture is very much like that. And so this is one taste of what it's like. This is a cartoon by a famous deaf artist. And, the deaf guy is what it's called. So the first panel is a hearing introduction. Oh, this is their name. This is you. Go talk. Good. But when we do the deaf introduction, because we are so interconnected with each other, we may not know each other personally, but for sure we know something about them through somebody else. And so we add that to the discussion about who these people are when we're doing introductions. And that's like, oh, okay, this is how we fit in. And that's how we know our network. I hold that back when I'm with you. But in the back of my mind, I'm making that list and making those connections. And so code switching is possible because of this. If you understand the different cultural practices and different norms, then you can code switch in between them. And so I am a scientist and I code switch all the time. And it's exhausting, but exciting as well. Another thing that I wanted to talk about for many sign languages is that they're three-dimensional. I actually just had this conversation during lunch, so I guess a good time to bring it up now. With sign language, almost all sign languages, I won't say all, but there are 5 components. So we have hand shape, different hand shapes that we will make. We have palm orientation, where it's facing. And if you move your hand forward or backwards, it does have a different meaning. Location in your 3D space, on your body, front and back, behind you. Movement of your hands. And non-manual signs, which is any facial movement or body movement. And that is part of the grammatical structure of our sign language. And if we change one of these 5 components, everything in the meaning changes. It's beautiful. And so I would do this sign or maybe another sign. And obviously there's a difference, right? You can see that. But if I were to do maybe this L hand shape and maybe a back way or a forward way, but if I go forward way with an L shape like I did previously, it has a different meaning. That one thumb movement would make a difference. And it's really exciting, the opportunities that then lend itself here. And some of the most talented deaf performers, you saw that woman, Trisha, who was doing the sign of coming together. When I mentioned there were so many different ways that you could interpret that. And you're watching the deaf storytellers use space. It's wonderful. But a lot of deaf performers don't want interpreters there. Doesn't matter. They don't care if you know sign language or not in the audience. No interpreters, period. Because they want you to see them in that natural language use using the space that they have. All right, so what does that mean for us here? It's a challenge, and it's something that I will be honest with you. That means when I'm signing for this group of mixed audience ministry, especially when we're looking at a hybrid, when people are joining us online, my sign language almost, I would say, comes flat, especially working with ASL English interpreters as well. And so using interpreters mean that you have access to this talk, but not to my sign language, not to my signing. My signing has been code switched to the situation and to the audience. And people are watching me. Ooh, I want to see the sign for that word. I'm going to watch you for that. No, you're not going to win that game. Sorry. You may catch 1 or 2 here and there, but you're losing the meaning. You will lose that. All right, so who are we as deaf scientists? There's not a lot of us. That is a problem. Right now, for freshwater scientists and marine as well, aquatic science, I'll say, the Association of, I'm trying to remember, what does it stand for, ASLO? The Association of Society of Limnology, Oceanography. And so, it's the who's who. They have that list there. And right now, there's only 2 signing deaf professors in the world in this field. There's 2 of us. So there's myself and my wonderful colleague, Dr. Carrie Sullivan, who is working at Gallaudet University right now. And she's indicated here on the slide with her picture. The good news is that there is more people coming up through the system. We have Dr. Barbara Spencer, who is now working as a postdoctorate fellow in California doing marine oceanographic science. There's a PhD scientist in France who's working on whales. And so there are more and more people coming up through the pipeline. And I don't have permission to give all of those names, but I'm happy to introduce people if you want to reach out to me directly. And so that's worthy of celebration. So, but then you have to think, so there's only been so few for so long. There's more deaf people out there than there are recognized here. And so why aren't more people coming up through the pipeline? And why are they not getting there and they're dropping out on the way? Well, accessibility and inclusion needs improving. And then a lot of people will ask me, well, there's so few of them. Why should we care? We have to worry about interpreters and all of this. It's just not worth it for one or two people to come to a conference. I'm not going to bother with all that. Okay. I love metaphors. So I have a very extended metaphor coming up to explain why that is not the case. Okay, we're ready? Ready for this extended metaphor? All right. We have an image of Earth here. And people think it's a water-rich planet. We're not. There's more water on other planets in our solar system than there is on Earth. On the surface of Earth, the liquid form of Earth, on Earth is, plentiful. That's where we can benefit from. But let's say if we were to scrape all of the water, groundwater, glaciers, oceans, if we were to take all of that water and put it into a ball, a sphere of water, that's what we would end up with. That is the entirety of our global water supply in one little ball. Earth is a good name for Earth because that's what we are. And so this is all the water in the world, but then the proportion of that is fresh water. So glaciers, groundwater, fresh water. Is that big ball just off to the side here. And so that is all of our fresh water, the surface fresh water available to us. And then that speck, that teeny tiny speck that you may not be able to see, that small speck is smaller than the Great Lakes. And so we have our 20% of the water that is the fresh water. And then of all of the water, surface water, 20% of that. And so really we have 20% of 20% of 20 of all of the global water, roughly speaking. And so when we look at Canada, all the water in the world, and then we take the 20% of fresh water, and then we have the 20% of that, which is the surface accessible water. Canada has 20% of that. So people ask me, well, there's so few deaf people in the field. Why should we care? Well, why do we care about fresh water then? It's an important resource, so of course we should care. In the aquatic field, many people will study the diversity that's involved. So diverse habitats. We're looking at the water chemistry, the diversity of fish, zooplankton, all the way down to the very minuscule organisms. To look at the health of the system, they will take those diverse approaches, and that's important. If I were to ask any of you, well, hey, why is this important? I'm sure right away you can draft an abstract in no time at all and convince people why this is important to look at. Right? And so, do we need diversity in our field? It's easy to say, yeah, of course we do. If you were to do a Google search of some images, it depends on where you are, your IP and so forth. There is some variability. I did my search in Halifax last week, and this is what I got. This is what I pulled up when I searched. I did freshwater scientist, aquatic biologist, and then limnologist. What do you see? Homogeneous. And it's nice to see female and male appearing people in these images. And so when I did my search, I saw a lot of light-skinned people, and again, I was in Halifax and I was just, maybe in Africa, you'd have a different response if you typed in the same keywords. It looked like there were a lot of able-bodied people on the screen. People were outdoors, you know, with logos and this and that. Okay, but how many of you are actually not outside in the field, but you're in front of your computer? What proportion of your time you're in your computer versus in the field? I'm guessing between 20 to 75% of the time you're just in front of a computer. And so do you need an able-bodied scientist to do that? Not really. There's a lot of work that can be done that you don't need to be an able-bodied. Light-skinned, definitely not. You don't have to be. And as well, do you need to have just the binary genders displayed? No. Diversity of thought? Yeah, we need that. And some of the best people that are solving problems, those in their world, like, you know, maybe engineering, but, you know, deaf, disabled, and marginalized people, you know, we're at the top for that diverse thought problem solving. And so it's really, when you look at our field, it's so ironic. We're focused on analyzing the diversity of our aquatic ecosystems, the environment, but what about us? We're not looking at us and seeing our diversity of the community. So that's a problem. And again, there's so few of us. Why should we care? It's not worth it. No. Well, that is a cause for red flag. We need to flip the script and say, there's so few of you. Why? I could go on and on and on. I tried to develop an infographic of the different barriers that are faced, but it's just too complex to illustrate in so you know, I'll park that for later when I have to develop something. But really the point, and really it's not the point of my talk. It's not to talk about the barriers. The point is to talk about, why are we marginalizing so many people? And of course, there are many, many reasons, and it's systematic is the reason. But I want to focus on one really commonality that we can all look at, is the hidden labor. So for example, many women professors are asked to sit on committees because they need that representation and they need to show that there's women on this committee. And so the small group of women that are available to do service work are actually doing more service work than their peers because they have to be on all these committees. Students are coming up to them expecting that the women will be more friendly and more open to having these conversations. So all of those expectations add up, and it then reduces the amount of time that they have for their service, research, and teaching. And so I will get to that in a couple of slides. I won't read all of this text that's on the screen, but there is a really good radio documentary on CBC of deaf scientists. So I really do recommend everybody check that out. And I can send you the link as well, no problem. But during the interview, there were several deaf scientists, and there's some common things that we all came up. You know, some saying, yes, we're proud of the work that we're doing, and thank you to all of the people that made this happen. But there's too few of us. And just because we're here doesn't mean that the barriers are gone. Not at all. And so again, flipping that script, and how can we lift and improve the pipeline for those coming up? Another metaphor for everybody, an iceberg. This is not a technically accurate iceberg, but it is a beautiful picture regardless, so we can use it. And we know icebergs, you know, what you're able to see above the surface is just 10% and 90% is underwater. And so here's a boat full of scientists and researchers going out to research around the icebergs. It's hard work to get there, absolutely. You need a lot of training. You need to take degrees, you know, professional development. The captain has to make sure that he has his certification and his licenses and so forth. The crew have to be, you know, obviously expertly qualified to be on a research vessel such as this. And the researchers on the vessel have also, you know, got to that stage in their career where they have earned their place. And that's hard work, absolutely. I'm going to acknowledge that. It's not easy for everybody. It's very exciting to be able to get there. But a lot of scientists, they don't have to worry about making the boat. They don't have to go to the shipyard and actually pin together and learn how to weld and Revit and all the things for the boat. They don't have to. They don't have to sew the life jackets. They're there already for them. Or they just buy them and systematically they're available to them. And so a lot of people will call the glass ceiling the ice is what is represented here. Those who are trying to succeed, getting to work on that boat and breaking through that ice. There's a barrier. They have to get through that ice to be able to get onto the boat. Maybe they don't need to. A lot of marginalized groups. There are areas that are dangerous and unknown to them. They have to figure out how to navigate through that. It's a very complex system of icebergs to even get to the surface of where the ice is. And they're focused on the boat, but maybe we don't have to. There's many ways to do science. There's not just one approach. And so the lived experience that those marginalized groups have is incredibly rich. And so systematic oppression exists, but the experts are those who have lived experience. Try not to put all of the work on their shoulders, but listen to them. They have the expertise. Allies, collaborators in interdisciplinary fields are very important. And sharing knowledge and experience and data with each other and that reciprocity and how we improve the system is important. So hidden later is that navigating the icebergs, and there's so few of us that I can't just say, hey, I'm going to call a person in the world and say, hey, how did you do that? How do I? And then they'll ask me, well, how did I do it? It just, we're learning together how to navigate this. And so we try to share the information as much as possible when we come from these marginalized groups. Here is a website, for example, that has information on how to work with interpreters, and I can certainly share that with you as well. And this part is what I'm hoping to publish. And so please contact me if you'd like to use any of the following information. And here are some examples of hidden labor and how visible or not visible they are and how beneficial they are to your career. So at the first is doing conferences, having a thesis, publishing, all the stuff that we're doing anyway. That's very visible. And there is benefits to our career to be able to do that. And then preparing to work with the interpreters, preparing the resources, for example. It's more visible because for example, Joyce, hey, you got to help me plan with these interpreters. And now Joyce is able to see that work and see the discussions that takes place. But I too have to invest time. Almost no interpreter in Canada has a science degree. There's none. There's no interpreter in Canada that has a science degree. So who then isn't teaching the interpreters how to interpret science is me. And the interpreters are doing a great job. It's fine. But I'm the one doing the work to train the interpreters. And I'm collaborating with the interpreters to ensure this this works. And so that's less visible. And it's funny, so many people ask the interpreters, hey, do you have a science degree? Oh, you're doing such a great job. It's like, but nobody acknowledges my work or my colleagues' work that was being presented about. That's invisible to them. Okay, interpreting is a hard job, yes, but it is a partnership. It is not done in isolation. And then organizing access, coordinating things, negotiating access. Very few people are witness to that. For example, here in the room, maybe Andrea and Joyce, who were involved in the coordination of this, but nobody else in the room would have seen that work. It's just magic. You've come and boom, there's 2 interpreters in the room. You're able to hear the talk, right? It's easy. Well, no, it's not. And so on and so on. And so the more hidden the labor is, the less visible it is, the less that you'll be, credited for that in the career, and it more of the energy that is taken from me that then I can't contribute to the actual work I'm doing. And so I have a big table. I won't go through all of it, but just to give you an idea. And again, I'm hoping to publish this, so please do reach out before using any of this information. And so this is a brainstorming practice that I did, so please do provide me feedback on it. But this is the types of work that is visible. Then the next column is who sees that work. And then the last column is who doesn't see that work. The idea being at the top, it's more visible. People will see that. And other people may not see that work because I don't see that mentorship or that networking taking place. I don't have access to that. So I don't see it. I have to learn the hard way to get there. And as you go through, and then all the way at the bottom, again, working with the interpreters, working to make sure access is in place, that's stuff that I should not be doing in the first place. It should not be my problem to deal with this, but it is. And there are very few people that see that. Myself, my deck colleagues that have gone through the same experiences, and our own family and friends who miss out on time with us because we're doing this. And who really, nobody sees that. Nobody does. And so I'm working on this table and I'm brainstorming different ideas. Maybe you're seeing things that I'm not able to anticipate. So please do provide feedback. I'm open to that. And seeing this in a visible way makes it very clear, and documenting it does obviously help for that. It's a good tool. I have a very long tip sheet again, so it's for my publication. Don't worry about it too much. But first thing, what can you do? First thing really is looking at yourself. It's painful, it's hard, but it's worth it. So for example, oh, that deaf woman, oh, that transgendered person. When you have that thought, hold on a moment. Why are you saying that? We're not saying, oh, just Dr. Campbell, the scientist who's working on fresh water. We're not saying that. Or we're not saying this doctor so-and-so who's working on these things. Why are you seeing them as deaf and transgendered? That's a moment for everybody, if you're having that thought, to take a moment. And that's where that othering starts. We all do it. Just acknowledging that is good. And look for opportunities to collaborate. Unfortunately, a lot of my collaborators, I'm the one coming out to them saying, hey, I've got this idea. Do you want to work together on this? It's not often that people come to me and say, hi, Linda, let's work on this. And so just going up and saying hi, that's it. That's simple. And then see what happens. And your colleagues that have lived experience, what we would call first voice, listen to them. They may not agree with each other because they are making their own decisions, but don't go around them. Don't go over their head. Listen, incorporate what they're saying into your process. And then if they're giving you that gift of being direct with you to say, stop this or do something, that's a gift. Don't get upset. Listen and reflect on it. And don't just say, oh, no, I'm not. Oh, no, no. No, it's a moment to say, allow that person to be direct with you because they are not in a safe space. And one thing that's really important is there's no one way to do amazing science. I have the privilege of publications. I've been graduate, and I've certainly acknowledged that, and I treasure that. But there are many approaches to doing science. This is science, what I'm showing you right now. So look for opportunities to bring interdisciplinary ways to your science. You've invited me here to give this talk today. try to avoid what they say, that mantle, where they have, all of the same background on the panel and then just that one person. And I'm hoping that I'm not the only one and that there will be, other people brought in and looked for to have that diversity on the speakers list, which is great. And then we have the expertise of equity and inclusion. That's a good step to start that process. And recognizing your work, Andrea, as well is important. Another thing too, make sure there's funding in place and you have money ready. Don't be paralyzed when you're like, oh no, I don't have the money. Or hey, where are we going to find the money for this? I want to thank those who made it happen for us here today. It was hard. Personal experience, I know that it was hard, but I feel included. And so thank you. A lot of people from marginalized backgrounds, they don't have the privilege or the wealth or stable salary or, they're paying their debts. So if you're having marginalized people come in, think of honorariums for them. That's one way to provide a resource that then they can be participants in something. I don't need one, for the record, just to say, but consider that for the diverse group of people that you'll be bringing in. And I mentioned, certainly acknowledge the people that are working for EDIA. JEDIA is Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion is the JEDI. So acknowledge the work that those people are doing. It's not easy work. And everybody can do this work. Even people who may seem to have quite a bit of privilege. If they're doing the work, acknowledge that they've done the work. You don't need to be their cheerleaders. You don't need to go that far. But it is certainly, thank you for doing the work. Thank you for having that included. And mentorship, that is a huge challenge. A lot of people from marginalized groups, they need access to two types of mentoring networks. So they need a professional network. If you're mentoring somebody from a different background than yourself or than your group, introduce them, bring them in, but there's also the mentorship that they need of their community and from their community. Be sure that you're working with the individual to identify opportunities for marginalized groups to be involved, and then have that community of practice aspect so that those who have common experiences that all have that same first voice are able to mentor each other. For me, it's like, where do you find a deaf scientist? Well, I'm lucky to have a huge global network at my disposal. There might be one or two of us, but I can reach out to somebody in the States. I can reach out to somebody in Europe. And so I'm lucky to be able to have that. But there are people who are early emerging career researchers that may not know how to find those or access those networks. So consider how you can encourage the involvement in both professional and community type of networks. And if you ask somebody from the marginalized group to be a mentor, make sure their work is acknowledged. I have given up so many weekends, so many evenings on things to talk with other emerging and early career researchers, in different STEM fields. I don't mind, but that work is very hidden. I can't put that on my CV, and I can't, where do I put that? So if you do find somebody from a marginalized group who's willing to mentor, find a way to acknowledge them. So it's a lot of information I'm throwing at you. Don't worry. Hopefully you'll, take out one or two takeaways from the list today. All right. And so now open to discussion and questions. And first of all, I'll give you a story of what you're looking at here. And it's actually going to be the first slide for my next presentation. And so this is a group of people. There's an intern, a graduate student, and a colleague. We're working together here. and doing amazing, amazing group of people that I work with. Here are just 3 of those. And, when I was saying those honest comments, I'm not speaking to or about those in my research group. I'm talking about the system. So thank you. Any questions? Any discussion?
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for sharing with us today. And I want to personally recognize your emotional labor and efforts in sharing with us, because it's really a privilege for us to listen and learn from you today. So we may have questions from the Zoom audience. Andrea will be handling those, and I will handle those from the audience here. Maybe we'll start with the Zoom audience first, Andrea.
We don't have any questions, actually.
Oh, not yet? Okay.
So,
All right.
And so, for example, you may have experienced in marginalized groups. I don't, ask you to disclose. That's not the point. But if you have any questions on how to navigate that, or any advice for me, I'm open to that as well.
there isn't a question. I'll ask the first question, which is, do you have any advice for deaf students in choosing a graduate program? What would the advice that you would give to a student who's choosing which graduate school they should go to, especially in the instance where they may be the only deaf scientist in their cohort? What should they look for to start that process of choosing, an institution and a supervisor?
Thank you. Assuming that it's a thesis-based research program, there's many types of programs, but if you do a thesis-based and doing research, the relationship with your supervisor and the lab is very important. I would say right away, go visit the lab. Talk with the supervisor. Ask some hard questions of the group. Ask about their communication. What's the rapport? What are the projects? Will there be field components, just lab components? And are there interpreters out there? And do you feel comfortable in this environment? Because the relationship with your supervisor is paramount. They are the ones that make things happen for you. And then I would also add, look for deaf scientists anywhere that you can network with, and then contact them to talk with them. Yep. Yes, you're not alone.
Did you see the message from the interpreter?
Yes, I think those are past messages.
Oh, okay, good. All right, I have a question as well. So what resources would you recommend that allies advocate for within institutions to address needs of deaf colleagues? So what should we be advocating for that are critical to empower you?
Work with the deaf students or the colleagues first. Get to know, don't assume that you know something before you go ahead with some actions. But there are resources available. The last slide that I was holding, I can't show you now because Zoom is on, but there is a list of possible resources that are publicly available. And also, it's important to see if these resources are the right resources. And so finding the network that has provided those and do that screening process for resources is important. But there are resources available. There's lots of them. So the networking part, again, is very important to this. And the knowledge generally is inside of our own heads. And so that network, again, is important. But we're so busy to then publish the work that, because it's in our head and how we've done this work. And we're too busy to publish it yet.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Don't be shy. Yes? So the question from the audience member is, knowing that there are many different sign languages around the world, if you were communicating with someone from another country speaking a different sign language, are you able to communicate with them? Are there ways to bridge the differences in the languages? Does that summarize? Okay, thank you.
It's a wonderful question because we're talking about, well, are we talking about both spoken languages and sign languages? So if I would be going to the UK, you know, I don't know British Sign Language at all. Yeah, I can get a couple of words, but not enough to be anywhere proficient to have a conversation. And English to BSL interpreters in the UK, I think that would be a bit of a challenge for me to follow along. So it's a really good question because we're talking about more than one language. And it's important consideration as well when we're going to other countries or different universities and doing all these various projects to consider that and the multiple languages in use. There is a lot of ways to navigate that. Deaf people are very good at problem solving. If we're going to another country right away, we'll reach out to the other deaf person that we know there, or, you know, getting an understanding of the system. How does it work here? Hopefully pick up some language or find, you know, an English ASL interpreter, because there are ASL interpreters in the UK, for example, and in other countries. Some of them, but there is. But you need to know who to contact to find those that have similar languages. And so that not just in the UK, but there's other countries as well. And then for scholarly research or studies, for field work, it's a little bit different. There's a lot of options that we can employ. Sometimes not even to bring an interpreter, because we just will manage one-on-one to navigate that situation depending on the privilege at play. Or if we go to a conference or a meeting, you know, we have to plan in ahead. You know, like for here, I think we have started planning. When did I got invited to this 3 months ago or so, right?
Yeah, June, July. Yeah.
So right away, when I was invited, I started planning with the interpreters, reaching out to all the deaf people I know in Saskatchewan. Okay, who's the other interpreters locally that we can work with? You know, what's the list of those interpreters that you would recommend? And then right away, working through the list and find, you know, luckily the first on the list said yes for our local interpreter we're working with here today. But there are strategies and approaches that we employ to do that. But the first step is not to think, what am I going to talk about? Unfortunately, the first step that I'm thinking about is how to get interpreters in place. And once that's taken care of, then I can actually think about what I'm going to talk about in my presentation. And so that's another piece of hidden labor. Yeah, good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one more question then. Is you mentioned, you know, the burden actually of having to train interpreters in different disciplines for yourself, and that it's assumed that as the scientist expert, you will take the time to train interpreters. What would it look like to have an institution take that on? How could institutions be part of the process of training interpreters in different disciplines?
That is a fabulous question. Thank you. Fabulous. A little bit of a can of worms here. And I won't open that can. There's a lot of complexities at play. And again, I want to emphasize the importance of listening to those with first voice. And so to ask for institutions to take on that training is very disempowering. And so I might flip that to say that I would ask, why are the professional interpreters not keeping up with this? Why are the professional interpreters not keeping up with the professional deaf, professional hearing people? That's the question we should be asking. And that's a very dangerous question to pose. You know, for me, I'm putting myself in a big risky position to be saying this, but you know, that's where we're at right now. So I think the responsibility is not just myself, not just institution, but it's the field of professional interpreters that need to take that on. So they need to ask themselves that question. Fortunately, there are, interpreters that are considering that. And so I have to acknowledge that there are those in the profession that are doing that work. Yeah, thank you.
Any online questions, and I think we're just about at time. So I think we can invite everyone to enjoy some refreshment.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Campbell, for sharing your experiences with us today. And we look forward to your next presentation as well. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody.